The desert wind cut across the canyon like a blade, scattering red dust into the blood-streaked sand where she lay, half-conscious, her breath shallow and ragged, her body broken in ways no warrior should ever know. Nahele, daughter of the Apache, once fierce and proud with a bow that sang true and a spirit that could not be tamed, now lay abandoned by her own tribe, her legs crushed beneath the hooves of a spooked stallion during the chaos of a raid gone wrong, her people believing her spirit was lost, leaving her behind as the sun rose merciless and the vultures circled overhead. Yet deep inside the broken frame of her body, her heart still beat with the stubborn rhythm of survival, her mind clinging to the memory of freedom, of laughter around the fire, of the faces that turned away when she reached out in her pain. And it was in that hollow of betrayal, when even her own blood had forsaken her, that the sound of hoofbeats approached again, not her people returning, but alone. Cowboy riding slow, hat brim low to shield his eyes from the sun, rifle slung across his saddle, a man whose name she would not know for days to come, only the silhouette of a stranger whose shadow stretched across her broken body like a strange salvation. And though her instincts screamed to hate him, to spit at the foreigner with pale skin and weary eyes, she found herself whispering instead, her voice barely more than dust on the wind, a plea not for vengeance, not even for healing, but simply for water, for life, for one more chance to breathe. And he dismounted without hesitation, boots crunching on gravel, kneeling at her side as if her mangled form did not repulse him, as if her bloodied hands clutching at nothing were not something to fear, but something to honor. And in that moment, in the stillness between predator and prey, a bridge was built, fragile and strange, between two souls who by every rule of this harsh land should have been enemies. His name, she would later learn, was Jacob, a man who had buried his own past beneath layers of silence, a drifter with no tribe, no home, no kin but the horse he rode. And as he lifted her broken body into his arms, ignoring her weak protests that she was not worth saving, that her people had declared her already dead, his steady voice whispered back, "You're still here, ain't ya? Still breathing?" "That's enough for me," words simple yet carved with such weight they planted something unexpected in the ashes of her spirit. And as he rode with her across the barren plains, cradling her against his chest as the sun fell and the stars emerged, she realized for the first time that compassion could bloom even where no blood ties bound, that humanity itself could be a tribe when all else was lost. And yet her heart still wrestled with doubt. What use was she now, a warrior without legs, a protector who could not even stand, a woman whose tribe had cast her aside as if her worth had ended with her limbs? But Jacob, though quiet, seemed to see beyond her scars, tending to her wounds each night with rough hands that carried surprising gentleness, sharing his meager rations without complaint, speaking rarely but always with truth. And in the silence between them grew a trust she had not expected, fragile as the desert flower that blooms once a year, fragile yet undeniable. And though every vulture in the sky seemed to mock her, to remind her of her place between life and death, she clung to his presence as proof that the world had not fully turned its back. And somewhere deep within her chest, the embers of her spirit began to glow again, faint but alive, as she listened to the cowboy hum old songs by the fire, his voice low and steady like the earth itself, a sound that wrapped around her pain and told her without words that she was not alone. And perhaps, she thought, survival itself was a form of rebellion. Perhaps even without legs, she could still be more than what her tribe decided. Perhaps this stranger who had no reason to help her had shown her that worth is not given by others but carried within. And as her eyelids grew heavy beneath the watch of a sky thick with stars, she promised herself silently that if she lived through this, if she found the strength to rise from the ashes of what she had been, she would not only survive but become a testament to kindness, to resilience, to the truth that even in the harshest of worlds, humanity could still shine. And as sleep finally claimed her, safe in the care of the man who had chosen compassion over convenience, she did not know yet that her life was only beginning a new chapter, that fate itself had placed her on a path where strength would take on a new meaning, and that the cowboy's kindness, so simple and unremarkable in his own eyes, would ripple far beyond either of them, carving a story that deserved to be told, remembered, and shared with every heart in need of hope. When dawn came, painting the desert sky in bruised shades of violet and fire, Nahele awoke to the smell of coffee and wood smoke, the ache in her body reminding her that life had not been a dream, that she was still broken, still legless, still caught between the shadow of death and the stubborn grip of survival. And yet there was Jacob, crouched by the fire, his silhouette framed by the rising sun, pouring steaming liquid into a tin cup with the same care he had shown her wounds, as if tending to the simple rituals of the morning could keep the world steady. And when he handed the cup to her, his hand brushing hers, she felt the warmth travel not only through her veins but through the part of her spirit that had grown cold since her people abandoned her. For days they traveled, him carrying her when the terrain grew rough, him crafting a makeshift litter from branches and leather straps when his horse needed rest, his voice always calm though his eyes told stories of loneliness she had yet to hear. And as she healed enough to sit upright, as the fever broke and her breath grew stronger, she began to see the world differently, not from the vantage of a warrior on horseback but from the stillness of one who must observe. And in that stillness she began to notice the kindness in small things, the way Jacob always gave her the last sip of water, the way he spoke to his horse as if it were kin, the way he never once treated her as a burden though she felt like one every hour of the day. Yet doubt gnawed at her still, whispering that she was nothing without her legs, that she was less than the warrior she once was. And one night, unable to hold back, she spat her anger at him, her voice sharp like the crack of a bowstring. "Why do you bother? I am no use. My people were right to leave me. You should have too." And Jacob, staring at her across the fire, let the silence hang long enough that the desert itself seemed to hold its breath, then finally spoke, his voice quiet but heavy with truth. "Maybe they were wrong. Maybe you're more than what they saw. You're still breathing, ain't ya? Still got fire in those eyes. Don't tell me that don't mean something." His words struck deeper than any arrow ever could, and for the first time, she wept, not out of pain, but out of the realization that perhaps she had measured her worth by the wrong scales all along. Perhaps strength was not only in limbs and speed but in endurance, in heart, in the will to rise even when the world declared you finished. As the days turned into weeks, Jacob carried her to a small town on the edge of nowhere, a place of dust and saloons and skeptical eyes, where folks stared at the sight of an Apache woman cradled in the arms of a white drifter, where whispers followed them like shadows. But Jacob ignored them, and slowly, so did she. He traded odd jobs for medicine and food, fixed fences, hauled water, anything to provide, and she began to learn new ways of fighting back against despair, sewing, carving, even teaching children stories of her people beneath the cottonwood trees, her voice strong though her body was scarred. And soon the town children came to call her Auntie Nahele, their laughter pulling her back into the rhythm of life. Yet the true test came one evening when riders from her old tribe passed through the town, faces she once called kin, men and women who looked at her as if she were a ghost, and one of them sneered, "You live. Without your legs, you are nothing." The words burned, but before she could speak, Jacob stepped forward, his voice steady as the earth. "She's more alive than most of you'll ever be. You left her, but she didn't quit. That's worth more than your pride." The silence that followed was heavy, and though her tribe left without apology, she felt no anger, only a strange release, as if the chains of their judgment no longer bound her. That night, under the stars, she thanked Jacob, but he shook his head, saying, "Don't thank me. Thank yourself. You did the living." And in that moment she understood. Kindness had saved her body, yes, but belief, his belief in her when she had none, had saved her soul. From that day forward she chose not to measure her life by what she lost but by what she gave, pouring her strength into the children, into the town that once doubted but now respected her, into Jacob himself, who slowly allowed her to see the pain he carried too, the family he lost to fever years ago, the wandering he had done to outrun grief, the way saving her had, in truth, saved him as well. Together they formed not a tribe of blood, but of choice, proving that humanity itself is the greatest bond. And as years passed, the legend of the Apache warrior woman who lost her legs but found new strength began to spread, not as a tale of tragedy but as one of resilience, of kindness that crossed boundaries, of hope that refused to die. And though she still bore scars, though she sometimes woke in the night with tears for the life she once had, she never again felt abandoned, for she had found a new way to belong, not by being whole in body, but by being whole in spirit. And if you listen to the wind across the desert even now, They say, you can almost hear her voice carried on the breeze, a whisper reminding all who feel forsaken, you are not done. As long as you breathe, you still matter. And that, dear friend, is why her story lives on, a story not of loss, but of kindness, courage, and the unshakable truth that compassion can change a life forever. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that even in the darkest deserts kindness can bloom, then take a moment to share it, to keep its flame alive, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that more stories of humanity, resilience, and hope can find their way to hearts that need them most.